I'm Melle Hartman, and today we're talking about keeping your emotional balance while trying to conceive. So if you're anything like me, I can get really caught up in like the nitty-gritty and like the data points of what my body is doing and like how to kind of manipulate those and optimize those to try to conceive. We're so like aware of our physical body and like more specifically our reproductive system that it's like we have this telescoping like microscopic view that's like super zoomed in, which is super useful because we're trying to get pregnant, but it prevents us from like kind of accessing other parts of, I guess, our senses that are also equally important when it comes to getting pregnant, but that exist like at a different level of perception. I'll try to explain what I mean. So when we're completely zoomed in and focused on our reproductive system, we are missing the bigger picture. So for example, like, why did you decide you wanted to have kids? Like, was it so that you could conceive them? No, like there's more to it, right? Maybe you were thinking about like the idea of like being a mother and how nourishing that might be to you. Maybe you were thinking about like the possibilities that you were introducing into the world by introducing a whole other being, the ripple effects of how that could kind of transmute through time and leave a lasting impression generated by you on this earth. Like there are so many bigger reasons why we have kids than like to conceive them, that it doesn't make sense to just be kind of so narrow-mindedly looking at that area. And when we do that, we kind of get obsessive, guilty, and forget why we're really doing this. How do you zoom out? How do you put things into context of like the bigger picture? So I have 3 ways that I do it, and from that you'll probably understand maybe what's best for you. For me, nature is how I zoom out, because when I'm looking, my window's here, so that's why I keep looking this way when I refer to nature. When I am looking at something that is in a scope beyond my physical self, something that has existed before and will exist after me, something that is like beyond my even scope of comprehension, that like feeling of awe and majesty makes me feel like I'm a small part of something big. So one of my favorite ways of connecting to like the macrocosm is through the moon phases. I'm super into like the sky in general, but the moon is like the be all and end all for me. Before we had artificial light, women's menstrual cycles were often kind of corresponded to the moon. I mean, it makes sense. Our menstrual cycles are like 28, 29 days, and we would often ovulate at the full moon. Now, this is like, I know it sounds kind of like mythical and stuff, but there's actually been studies that show that women produced more follicle stimulating hormone, which is what kind of stimulates the egg to be released, when there is natural light happening during the night. So when you're kind of you're exposed to the like what would be a full moon, you have a more chance of having an egg being released, and that's what kind of brought our cycles into moon cycles. Now, I don't ovulate according to the moon, but I do use the moon to sort of regulate my self-care, to make sure that I'm paying attention to myself on the micro level, but my cue is coming from something larger than myself. So when the moon is in its new phase, it's just beginning, that's when I will start new projects or maybe start a new habit or try something new. And then when it reaches its full wonderful wholeness, that's when I'll reevaluate those things and see, okay, is this kind of serving me? Maybe I'll also do maybe a little bit of what I like to call a manifestation ritual, make some wishes on the full moon type thing. And then as the moon is waning down is a time for release. So I'll plan to do maybe some sort of ceremonial cord cutting or something where I've reevaluated things that are no longer working for me, and that's when I'll let them go. And by kind of bringing my own habits and some of my own self-care things into the moon cycle, I feel like I'm being a part of something larger than myself. Another way that I like to sort of zoom out is through meditation. So there's this kind of strange meditation practice that I do where I imagine my life as a timeline. And first what I'll do is I'll stretch out the timeline. So I don't know how much of my hands you can see, but this side will be like my birth all the way to the present moment, and then this way is the future all the way to my death. And what I'll do is I'll pay attention and I'll run through all the happiest, most wonderful, like loving experiences that I had through my childhood, teenage years, 20s, up until the current moment. And then I'll kind of fantasize, imagine all those same sorts of like nourishing, loving, joyful feelings all the way into my future. I'm like super imaginative, let's say, like go all the way, like go full on, like millionaire, houses, cars, children, like anything that you want, like seriously, like just, but because the point is not to do anything except for feel the feeling of satisfaction and joy and contentment that you would feel in those situations. So dream big. And then once I kind of have all of that and I've gone through the timeline of feeling all the joy, then I sort of bring the timeline in and I fold it into myself and I try to experience all of those joyful moments, the ones that actually happened and the ones that didn't, all at the same time. And what happens then is sometimes, if I'm doing it, I don't know, properly, but sometimes I'll get this moment of ecstasy, of feeling pure awe and joy and connection, like a feeling of love that is just beyond, like just fills up like every part of my being. And I find that to be super nourishing. And that sort of is almost the opposite feeling of zooming in. Like I feel connected to everything and to like joy itself and to every being that has ever felt joy when I do that exercise. The last way that I try to kind of zoom out is to be at the ocean. Now, I don't live near an ocean. I'm in Montreal, Canada, so we're like a few hours drive from any ocean, and during COVID times, we can't go anywhere. So I don't have access to the ocean and I like literally feel like I'm missing it. But being at the ocean, like standing in front of it, is one of the most awe-inspiring, majestic, just like shaking, kind of like soul-shaking feelings that I have ever felt. Not only is the ocean just obviously beautiful, but I think about it in terms of how people saw the ocean through time, as a source of nourishment, as like an ideal barrier against your enemies, as like a potential, like what is over there on the other side, what is at the bottom. There is so much mystery and just awesomeness within the idea of the ocean that being there and even like talking about it almost brings tears to my eyes, because I feel such a connection with it, like I feel such a connection to my ancestors and humanity just by looking and being at the ocean, kind of like just like by beholding it. So that's this is Vega. So that's one of the ways. Those are three of the ways. Kitty. So those are three of the ways that I kind of zoom out and look at things that are larger than me, that I find I need almost like more often when I'm trying to conceive, because I spent so much time like really looking narrowly at my reproductive system. I hope this has helped you to identify some of the ways that you might be able to sort of zoom out and look at like the larger picture of things, which is so crucial, especially when we're spending so much time like zoomed in for a good reason. But the off-balancedness of it can make the trying to conceive experience sometimes more overwhelming than it already is. Thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned for more trying to conceive, pregnancy, and family topics.